we'd see other large thing, large what you'd call craft. I don't like using the word craft, but these, and with multiple witnesses come into the backyard, and we've got cameras with multiple batteries set up on tripods ready to go, and this thing had lights going around it, multicolored lights, and they were going in a pattern around the edge of it. And I didn't see a dome or anything on top. It was nighttime. It was coming over. It was very, very low. It flattened the batteries on both of our cameras. 11 batteries I had that flattened one after the other.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rob Freeman from Rob Freeman UFO World Explorer. Today we have Damien Nott with us. He's from Australian Aerial Phenomena Investigations. Damien, welcome.
Thank you so much, Rob, for having me on.
Damien, Marcus and I know your whole story, but for the benefit of the viewers, could you just give a brief rundown on how you got involved in all of this in the first place?
Yeah, sure. I'll make it as quick as possible. When I was 9 years old, I had a sighting close up of a red sphere of light. Followed me. It mimicked my movements. When I would stop walking, it would stop. And it seemed to do this for about maybe 30, 40 seconds, maybe up to a minute. It's hard to tell. I remember when you're 9 years old, time sort of goes a little bit slower when you're younger. But this thing seemed to follow me for a while. And kind of freaked me out a little bit. Not at first, but then at first I sort of felt calm. I was more curious, what is this thing? And looked up, and and then I got a little bit freaked out. So I grabbed my skateboard and ran the rest of the way home and told my mother, and my mother was like, "Oh, it's just an aeroplane." So that sort of launched me into I knew it was an aeroplane, even at that age. And so it kind of launched me into a career when I say career, a little bit of research. I started reading books about it, and my mother had a book about UFOs at home and the abominable snowman and mysteries and stuff like that. So I started reading that and getting into stuff like that. And then 3 years later, I had a sighting with my stepbrothers, and we were camping out, and we saw another red light coming down from the sky. It was getting bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden another light came in, a blue light, and started chasing this light around the sky, and they'd go vast distances and stop and go this way, and 90-degree turns without any forward inertia. It was absolutely incredible. And we watched two of these lights eventually chase this red light around the sky for a good 10 to 15 minutes. It was a very long sighting. And the three of us to this day, we still can't explain what it was. It's something that affected us as kids, and something that reinforced my wanting to know what they were, and trying to find out what they were. So I started reading everything I could from the libraries and this and that, and asking everybody. And and then from then on, I got a real heavy interest in the phenomenon, and I wanted to work out what it was I was seeing. And then during my life, I'd had, maybe up to about 10 sightings up until about 9 years ago. So they were sparse throughout my life, but I did see quite a number, but a very small number. But it wasn't until I came up to Dunedoo in the central New South Wales tablelands 9 years ago in 2012, and I saw a huge white ball on the second night I was here, and it was moving over the house behind us here, and very slowly, very slowly. And as it was moving across, all the dogs in the town were going crazy, the animals, and probably cats. And there was out on the outskirts of town where this white ball was headed, there was actually a cattle auction. Every month we have a cattle auction here. And so this thing was heading towards there, but it seemed to disappear behind a shed. But then within about 4 to 5 minutes, in the direction it was headed towards these cattle, the cattle all started going crazy. I mean, it was like a cacophony of, some symphony of cows. It was just absolutely crazy. And they did seem like that they were distressed. and you could hear them banging up against the, the metal railings that were encasing them and everything. And it was something that sort of seemed to affect them. That's something I've noticed time and time again with this phenomenon. It does affect animals, and it affects, even birds and all sorts of animals. So whether that's an accidental thing from what the phenomenon is giving off itself, some electromagnetic field or whatever, and the animals are picking up on it, or if the animals realize it's a type of predator kind of situation or whatever, and they get scared, who knows? But that really launched me into okay, now I've got to get a camera and start filming this stuff. And like before that, I'd had a small little camera and I'd caught a couple of little UFO sightings, but it's really dodgy little 12 megapixel Fuji camera. You buy it, Kmart or something like that for $30, and it didn't really capture much, but it did capture a couple things. And so during my life, I'd seen up until that point about maybe 4 of those red lights, the red spheres of light. Some of them are like the size of basketballs, and some of them are quite larger. And I always wondered what they were, but it wasn't until 2012 when I came up here when sightings really dramatically increased for me. I was seeing a lot of things in the skies, people around me. My father was witnessing with me. I'd call him outside to come and see them, and we'd write everything down, what we saw night after night. And we had people come into town. We had Sun Herald journalists come into town, UFO groups come into town. We had investigators come into town from all around New South Wales to see the UFOs. Every single one of them that came witnessed UFOs. The first team that came actually witnessed what I would describe, and what they described at the time, was almost a disc-shaped object with a dome, except it wasn't a classical Hollywood flying saucer. It's in a metal kind of contraption. It was a glowing orange thing around it, and it flew right over the home the very second the lead investigator came into town. And so my father and him called me. I was out the back and I had my camera set up right in that direction, and they were yelling and yelling. And so I've run through the house, come out, and they're pointing up over the house, and here's this thing moving slowly over the house, and unfortunately I didn't record the camera in the backyard. If I had to press record, I would have caught this thing going straight over. But we saw it, the 3 of us, straight away. And and from then on, the investigators knew there was something to it. The following night, I think about 7 of them camped out on my uncle's farm and witnessed a multicolored ball of light moving across the sky heading towards them. And it stopped right above their heads when they shone a flashlight on it, and all the colors went out, and it stopped and hung in the sky for about 3 hours. And you could see it because the stars behind it, and it was a black mass. But the lights went out, and it just stayed there, and then eventually disappeared. So, and then Mariana Flynn, who was the president of UFO Research New South Wales, she came up the following weekend as well. She witnessed 9 UFOs with me in the backyard over a period of 2 nights, just right here in Dunedoo. And on the second night, there happened to be some Sun Herald journalists in town who were investigating a fire in Coonabarabran, just outside of town. And they were told, because they were staying at the same bed and breakfast as Mariana, they were told by the owner, there's a guy up the road and there's a lady here investigating this guy who's seeing lots of UFOs. Can you go and, would you like to go and see him, sort of thing? And sure enough, she's asked me, and I said, yeah, bring them up, why not? And within about 10 minutes of them being here, Mariana said, oh, can you get your friends to come? And I was like, oh, okay. I don't control them or anything, but I said, yeah, no worries, I'll give it. I thought, and I put the thought out there, guys, now would be the perfect time. We've got 2 journalists here, from a reputable newspaper. Could you please come and show these guys something? Sure enough, within about 15 seconds of us sitting down looking up at the sky, 2 UFOs came over the house, white balls of light, very low, and they were playing a game of tag across the sky with each other. So one would move forward quick, and then the other one would catch up with it and slow down right behind it. And then that happened across the whole sky. And the journalists had never, ever seen a UFO before. And so they were absolutely gobsmacked. Even the cameraman couldn't pick up her camera, to film, because she was just absolutely awestruck, by what she was seeing. She'd never seen anything like that before. So, and so from then on in, they said, look, next weekend, do you mind if we come back after we do the Coonabarabran fires and pop past on the way back through to Sydney and maybe have another sky watch? And I said, yeah, maybe. Yeah, not a problem. We can have a sky watch, and would you like to be in the paper? And I said, look, I wasn't 100% sure at the time because I didn't want to go public because I know what happens to people going public, with this phenomenon. And but at the time, I thought, look, if they see something again and it's quite spectacular, then yeah, maybe I might go, and do a little story. And so long as they say what they've seen. And sure enough, they came back, did a story. They didn't have time for a sky watch. They were in a bit of a hurry to get back to Sydney, but sure enough, they interviewed me then and there. I said, yeah, why not? As long as you include it in the paper. And they did. They included that they witnessed UFOs on the property here. They couldn't explain. Air Services Australia said that they were probably dual satellites, but dual satellites don't change direction and color, and they're up quite high. And I know there's a DOD, Department of Defense satellite, where there's two of them. One actually flies at a 10-degree increment off the other one, so they're not directly behind each other. These things were chasing each other through the sky, so there's no way they were satellites, and satellites don't speed up and stop, that sort of thing. And so I mentioned that in the paper, and yeah, and then so then it garnered a lot of interest. I started doing UFO talks, presentations, that sort of stuff. I was approached after one of my presentations to see if I'd like to appear in a documentary called Australian Skies, because he thought my story was pretty out there, and which it is. And would you like to talk about it? And I was like, yeah, why not? All these sightings we were having. Sometimes my father and I would have in the backyard here. They come in waves, as you know, the UFOs. But some nights, 2 or 3 nights in a row, we'd have maybe 9, 10 per night come through, and they'd change direction and doing all sorts of stuff in the sky. And because this is known as this area is known as the Australian astronomy capital, Coonabarabran, just up the road. So there's very little street lights. There's very little light pollution from cities or anything. We're way out in the country, so you can see everything, the Milky Way, and it's just beautiful out here. And so it's one of them things that makes it a lot easier to see them, and you can see them amongst the stars. And we'd have ones that would pretend to be stars, and then all of a sudden a satellite would pass them, and then they'd follow the satellite, or weird little things like that, and smaller sightings. And then we'd see other large large, what you'd call craft. I don't like using the word craft, but these, and with multiple witnesses come into the backyard, and we've got cameras with multiple batteries set up on tripods ready to go, and this thing had lights going around it, multicolored lights, and they were going in a pattern around the edge of it. And I didn't see a dome or anything on top. It was nighttime. It was coming over. It was very, very low. It flattened the batteries on both of our cameras. 11 batteries I had that flattened one after the other. They'd start off as 4, and then go straight down, drain to 0. This was a sighting. It happened so slow that, it would have been one of the best video bits of footage ever. But for some reason, this object did not want us to film it. The truth and reality is I just want to get the subject out there, because I know for a fact growing up, I've lost friends over this. I've lost family over this. There are people who think I'm crazy or whatever the case is. But I've stuck to my guns. I know what I've seen, and I know my truth, and nobody can tell me any different. If I'm crazy, then my cameras are crazy too, because they're picking up the same stuff. And all the witnesses that I've seen, I'm up to 178 witnesses now who've witnessed the phenomena in nearly the last decade with me on multiple occasions, in some occasions. So it's I know it's just not me and seeing things where I've got some brain tumor and I'm seeing UFOs or whatever the case is. It's something different, and so yeah, it helps when you get the footage and the information and a little bit of evidence, as to back up your stories. Then it's not just a story. And at the end of the day, nothing's going to stop me with this, because I know that it's a reality, and I know that it's true, and I know that it's very important.